There's something deeply unsettling about watching Rod Stewart slow down. Not fall, not fail, just slow. At 81, with over 120 million records sold, a knighthood, and 2 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions, his life looks like a complete victory. But beneath that triumph lies a quieter question. What happens when you've achieved everything and you're still here, still performing, still chasing the stage? In 2025, during a heartfelt performance of Forever Young, emotion briefly replaced swagger. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was awareness. Time, once distant, had become part of the performance itself. When applause meets fragility. Just weeks after that emotional performance, can you me cry say mature tonight cooking steer reason sorry the illness and exhaustion. His response was telling. He said he was devastated, not inconvenienced, not frustrated, devastated. That word reveals something deeper than professional disappointment. It exposes dependence. For him, the stage isn't just work, it's oxygen. Removing it isn't rest, it's suffocation. At that level of fame, performing stops being optional. It becomes identity. And when identity is tied to applause, stepping away feels less like retirement and more like erasure, a disappearance no legend is ever prepared to accept. Before fame, a different dream. Long before global fame, Rod Stewart was a working-class kid from London with a very different ambition: football. Music wasn't the original plan. His voice, raw and weathered, wasn't trained for perfection. It was shaped by life. When he rose in the late 1960s and early 70s, he didn't present himself as polished or profound. He was bold, loud, and unapologetically flashy. Tight clothes, wild hair, and reckless charisma defined him. But that authenticity is what made him magnetic. He wasn't manufactured, he was lived in. And that authenticity would later make his transformation through decades both fascinating and costly. The explosion of fame in 1971. Everything changed in 1971 with Maggie May. Wasn't even meant to be the main track, yet it became a global anthem, hitting #1 in both the UK and the US almost simultaneously. At just 26, Stewart wasn't just successful, he was unstoppable. That sudden rise did something dangerous. It taught him he could win, not just survive. Fame didn't creep in, it flooded his world. With that came ambition, pressure, and the need to sustain momentum. Success became addictive, and the idea of slowing down even decades later would feel like betraying that explosive beginning. Fame, ego, and the cost of becoming bigger. As his solo career soared, tensions grew within his band. Faces. Success shifts dynamics. When one member becomes larger than the group, balance collapses. By the mid-70s, Stewart was no longer just famous, he was everywhere. His image dominated headlines as much as his music. Critics began questioning whether he was becoming more celebrity than artist. Instead of retreating, he leaned in. He embraced the spotlight, the lifestyle, the spectacle, but every step toward greater fame also pulled him further from his roots. The louder the image became, the quieter the original identity grew beneath it. Reinvention and backlash. When punk rock emerged and mocked glam excess, Stewart pivoted. He moved into pop and disco, releasing hits that topped charts but angered purists. Critics accused him of selling out. He didn't resist, he adapted. That adaptability kept him relevant, but it came at a cost. Every reinvention meant shedding another version of himself. Over time, those discarded identities accumulate. The question becomes, how much of the original artist remains? Reinvention ensures survival, but it also fragments identity. Stewart mastered evolution, but with each shift, he moved further from the raw authenticity that first defined him. The isolation of stardom. By the 1980s, he had everything: money, fame, global recognition. But with that came isolation. Privacy disappeared, relationships played out in tabloids, trust became difficult. When everyone wants something from you, authenticity becomes rare. Stewart himself acknowledged this reality, noting how superstardom forces you to filter people constantly. He also moved away from London, creating physical and emotional distance from his origins. While he built an empire, life back home continued without him. That disconnect, watching your past evolve without you, is a quiet, often grief many legends carry. When the industry moves on by the 1990s, the music landscape had shifted again. Grunge took over, and artists like Nirvana and Pearl Jam redefined what audiences valued. Stewart was no longer the center of youth culture. He had become a legend. While respectful, that label carries weight. It can also signal irrelevance. Instead of fading, he reinvented again, turning to classic standards with his American Songbook series. It was a strategic move toward longevity rather than dominance. But this phase required humility. He wasn't chasing trends anymore, he was preserving legacy. And that shift is often harder than the climb to fame itself. The year every singer faces in 2000, Stewart faced a threat greater than fading relevance: losing his voice. Diagnosed with thyroid cancer, he underwent surgery that risked everything his career was built on. Afterward, he feared speaking, unsure if his voice would return. Recovery meant starting over: basic exercises, rebuilding strength, confronting vulnerability. For someone who once commanded massive arenas, this was a humbling reset. At 55, most protect their legacy. He had to rebuild his. That experience changed him. Survival wasn't just physical, it was existential. His identity had been shaken at its core. Survival leaves its mark. Years later, he quietly battled prostate cancer, only revealing it publicly to encourage awareness. There was no spectacle, no drama, just honesty. These experiences reshape perspective. Time feels different, priorities shift. You begin to see life not in decades, but in moments. Yet, despite everything, he continued performing. Because for him, stopping meant losing something essential. Applause became more than appreciation. It became reassurance. As long as people were listening, he still existed in the way he always had. That connection, fragile as it may be, kept him moving forward despite the cost. The quiet truth about legends. Outro. Now at 81, the reality is unavoidable. The energy remains, but the body resists. The stage still calls, but time answers louder. Legends like Rod Stewart don't fear failure. They fear fading away. Because when your identity has been built under stadium lights for decades, stepping back doesn't feel like rest. It feels like disappearance. And that's the quiet truth behind the applause. Even the greatest victories can't stop the clock. So the real question isn't about fame, it's about identity. When the lights finally go out, who are you without them?